Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I want to discuss with you guys the two new uniforms for Crystal and Gwenpool, give you guys my thoughts and opinions on which one I think is better, which one I think is best to invest in, and overall how they fit into the game right now. So let's jump right in and take a look at Gwenpool. The most important factors to consider when buying a uniform are the bonuses that it confers and also the skill changes that it makes. Sometimes one is more powerful than the other, sometimes they're both incredibly powerful. In Gwenpool's case, excellent uniform bonus, pretty lackluster skill changes, but the uniform bonus is quite interesting. It enhances the effect of her skill Adventurous, which, if you're not familiar, Adventurous is her 4-star passive that heals her. So normally when HP is below 90% without the uniform, it heals for 1% every 2 seconds, which is not bad. On my character with about 175 recovery rate, she heals for about 400 health every tick, every 2 seconds. However, with the new uniform, as you guys can see, it jumps up from 1% to 5%, which is a huge difference and not a number to be taken lightly. I was seeing around 1700, sometimes 1900 healed for Gwenpool with this new uniform, which is fantastic. That heal will make her a lot tankier. It really boosts her survivability. It makes it possible to take a tier 2 Gwenpool into Extreme Alliance battle and play for the full 3 minutes without dying comfortably. And fortunately, none of her skills were changed to take away her iframes. She still has as many iframes as before on her 4th skill, 5th skill, and her 3rd skill. This healing just makes her a lot tankier, so she can take hits and she can bounce right back up to full health, kind of like a mini Wolverine. As far as the skill changes go, Bombs and Blades is her 3rd skill, and without the uniform, it's a jump back iframe, which is useful for chaining iframes. So without her uniform, a lot of people used her 3rd skill to just cancel into other skills to, avoid damage from world bosses, to freeze characters in timeline because they couldn't track her, and it was basically used to rotate between the 5th skill and the 4th skill very fluidly. However, the new 3rd skill, it does more damage, I believe, but it has Gwenpool moving around a lot, and it's much more difficult to chain the skill and cancel it into other skills to maintain that iframe effect, at least in my testing, but I may be wrong, or I may not have given it enough practice to really get accustomed to it. So I think this is kind of mostly upside, but small downside if you really like to skill cancel and watch those iframes just get chained. I did find it a little bit more difficult, and I was more encouraged to use the 3rd skill to its full potential because it has a much more fluid animation and she kind of darts between enemies. However, I liked Gwenpool for the skill canceling, so I was a bit disappointed in that. But overall, this definitely makes her viable for things like Extreme Alliance battle. You're not going to get a top score like Kid Kaiju or Kate Bishop, but you will be able to score closer to 100,000, if not over 100,000. We already have reports in of people scoring 110, 115. So we should see the top end maybe around 125, 130 with a fully maxed out tier 2 Gwenpool. As far as the upgrades that you need for the uniform or the optional uniforms in order to get the best out of the results, you have their Punisher's Netflix uniform. The next one is Baby Groot, which a lot of people have. Then Moon Knight, which a lot of people have. Then Thor Ultron, which is a 1 gold or 500,000 gold uniform that most people have. And then the last uniform you need is the Falcon All New, All Different. That is the only uniform that kind of sucks to own. Not many people have it, and the people who do have it probably wish that they could get their crystals back because it's a terrible uniform. It's this one right here, and unfortunately, if you want to get that mythic bonus, which is going to be physical attack or all attack, I believe, you're going to have to invest in his uniform. On the other hand, we have Crystal. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little bit disappointed with this uniform overall. It feels like a cheap reskin to me. The uniform bonus is that it adds more web shots, and I don't think they mean web shots. I think they mean more casts or more creations of the Cyclone in her skill Cyclone. So it basically creates more twisters. Instead of one twister, there are multiple twisters that get created. It also changes around, as you see, Cyclone, which it mentions in the uniform bonus, and it also changes around Elemental Rage. It only changes around the skill's animation. It doesn't actually add an iframe, and it doesn't change the bind effect or entomb, and it doesn't change the guard hit either. So it's mostly a cosmetic effect on the 5th skill, and then the other skill, Cyclone, has a little bit of extra damage and more CC because there's more twisters to hit enemies and pull them in. Aside from that, there's literally no other bonuses that the uniform confers. Before the uniform, Crystal was a CC or crowd control monster, especially for Shadowlands, and a reliable world boss kill because of the guard hit on Elemental Rage. This uniform doesn't change that at all. All it does is it gives her a little bit more damage because you can get up to 20% all attack if you get her to Mythic in her uniform rank. Speaking of the upgrades, you need Electra's Netflix uniform, Gamora's Guardians of the Galaxy 2 uniform, which gives ignore defense 30% and is generally terrible. You need Black Bolt's all new and all different uniform, which is also terrible because the Attilan Rising, the new one, is much better with the damage proc. Then the legendary uniform that you need is Ultron Mark III. I believe that's the one where he looks like he's broken down. That one, again, it's a 1 gold or 500,000 gold uniform. Everyone should have it. And then the mythic uniform for Crystal's bonus is the Drax uniform. So 2, arguably 3 terrible uniforms are required to get Crystal's uniform up to Mythic with all of the bonuses. A little bit disappointing that they went with so many bad uniforms and only 1 Inhuman uniform. I know there's not a lot of other Inhuman uniforms, but I really felt like they could have done a little bit more. They could have even tied in Gwenpool and Crystal with each other. That could have felt cheap on the community's part, but I think it'd be better than having to buy something as awful as Gamora's new uniform or Drax's old 10% ignore defense uniform. It's just a little bit sad. Aesthetically speaking, I have to throw a little bit of criticism Netmarble's way. If you switch quickly between the uniforms, you can see that there is very little effort put into changing around anything on the character model itself. This is essentially just a reskin. They just hit the paint bucket on the hair and added a bit of flair on the body. There's almost nothing different as far as this character is concerned. They removed the fingertips on the gloves, which is kind of a nice touch. I mean, it looks good, but as far as effort, I don't think there was a lot put into this uniform to make it stand out. Similarly, Gwenpool's uniform is almost just a total reskin. The only thing that they did, aside from change around some of the brightness and some of the contrast, is they removed the katana and the extra sheath from her back, and they did have her mask hanging down. The mask hanging down is a nice touch. I do like that, but otherwise, it's difficult to see how these uniforms or how these looks are different. And I know this is just a purely aesthetic thing, but it is something to look for, and it is something to hope that they can do better about. In addition, obviously, the portrait icon for Gwenpool is terrible. I do want to go a little bit further with that, and I want to give you guys some examples of uniforms that really went above and beyond as far as the design aspect is concerned. So take my girl Elsa, for example. Her first uniform really doesn't do a lot. You can see there's a few changes, but there's mostly in terms of the colors. The jacket is almost identical. They just added some different, I think they're called lapels. But then we have a huge change with her newest Monsters Unleashed uniform. She changes her positioning. She has a different kind of stance that she goes through. She just kind of leans forward and leans back. They altered the character's hair quite dramatically, and they changed around her guns, and there's a lot different in this character. This is what I mean when I'm talking about a uniform that puts effort into the aesthetics of its appearance. Another example is Ronan. He looks dramatically different. His shoulders have a different shape. His body looks bulkier and shorter. They changed around the hammer a lot. And these are meaningful changes that actually make it feel like you're getting a different character. Additionally, taking a look at Yondu, his whole face changes. I mean, you can barely make out who this is. Now you can clearly see Mary Poppins there in the character portrait and in the actual character model. This is a fantastic uniform. Totally changes around his stance. He adds a gun. His hand goes from open to closed. There's a lot of effort and attention to detail in this uniform that I really feel is missing for the most part in these 2 new uniforms. And in addition to that, there's just not a lot of benefit from these uniforms. You know, Crystal and Gwenpool are both kind of B-list or B-tier characters. Obviously, Crystal cannot compete with the likes of Jean Grey, Doctor Strange, Sharon Rogers, Magneto, etc. in the Blast class, and Gwenpool has kind of always played second fiddle to the likes of Elsa, and now Kid Kaiju, and now Kate Bishop, and now possibly even Rogue. I do think, on the bright side, that the heal is fantastic for Gwenpool. If you like her, you will get a lot of extra durability out of the heal. So I do think the heal is fantastic. However, aside from that one factor, the skill changes are useless or next to useless. And then Crystal has no bonuses on her uniform. So you're basically only buying these for those up to 20% all attack, all defense. If you love these characters to death, if you're competing for rank 1 Crystal in the world, of course you have to get this uniform. Honestly, otherwise, I would say save your crystals. No pun intended. Especially because of the deluxe pack becoming such a central focus of the community now, and people trying to figure out how to save up 6,600 crystals. So if you guys are going to ask me again in chat, hey, which uniform should I get? Ask yourself this question. Do I want to wait an extra week or 2 or 3 to get Magneto? Is this uniform for Crystal or this uniform for Gwenpool really going to be worth those extra 2 or 3 weeks of saving crystals to delay Magneto and delay those extra feathers and Mcron shards and crystals? I think the answer is probably no. So with that being said, guys, I have to give both of these a pass, although I did buy them myself. Lastly, I do want to show you guys some of the skill changes so that we can have a definitive answer and a definitive proof of how these different skills have changed for these characters. So we're going to jump into a mission real quick, and we're going to test out the skills both with the uniforms and without. So taking a look at Gwenpool, all of her other skills stay exactly the same, but her new third skill functions like this. She does a bit of a dance and then things die. It's a very short skill, the animation is quite snappy, and she basically just throws a grenade and then follows up the grenade and moves forward. This is almost an inverted version of her old move where she actually jumps back, so I'm not really too sure why they went ahead and did this. It does make it a lot more difficult to skill cancel, and I'll show you guys what I mean here. I'm going to try to skill cancel the third skill into the fifth skill. It's possible, but it's a lot more difficult because she engages the enemy immediately with damage, and sometimes you lose tracking on the enemy because of the fact that you're attacking them and you killed them, and so you're not able to skill cancel as effectively as you would have otherwise been able to. By comparison, you're going to see here that Gwenpool's third skill actually has her jump back, and there's a brief pause before she engages the enemy with attacks. So it's a much different skill, and it makes it a lot easier for the player to actually time their iframes because that jump back is a full iframe effect. So here, I can get their attention, I can jump back, and I can easily float into other skills without activating the third skill's cooldown and allowing me to effectively skill cancel as much as I want between the third skill and either the fourth, fifth, second, or first. I do think I prefer this skill rotation as far as skill canceling goes to the one with her new uniform. Crystal, on the other hand, has 2 changes to her skills. For her first skill, Cyclone, you can see now that it summons a bunch of different twisters which then converge in the middle to meet the enemies. This does provide additional CC benefits because it'll take a crowd and push them together in the middle where you can then focus fire on them with other skills. So it is marginally better than her original first skill. Her fifth skill with the new animation is actually very, very cool looking because it combines 2 different elements together. This is very much like Avatar if Aang was in the game, and I do think that, at least aesthetically, this is one of the coolest skills that we have in the game. You have the earth, then you have the fire and the water summoning on both sides like pillars of justice. Please bring back the Legend of Korra. And then they meet in the middle and fuse together. Very, very cool stuff. At least it looks good, right? If it doesn't function well. In Crystal's case, her first skill is now just one hurricane or twister that she summons in front of her. As you can see, there's CC, but the twister kind of runs away from you, so you do have to chase it down a little bit. And instead of being 2 that converge, it's just 1 that's a little bit more difficult to control, but still does offer some crowd control ability, but definitely less than what she had with per uniform. And finally, Crystal's 5th skill, which I praised for its animation. Here, without the uniform, it's just a slam with the floating rocks. There's no fire hurricane. There's no water hurricane. There's no Aang bending all of the different avatars of elemental justice and truth and Korra and all that good stuff. It's just rocks, and it's just the entomb skill. I reckon that the 5th skill without the uniform has less damage overall and less AoE damage, but it really isn't going to make Crystal suddenly good for anything outside of World Boss and Shadowland. So that is my review of the 2 uniforms. Let me know what you guys think. Personally, I'm a little bit disappointed, but overall, I don't want to let my feelings affect you guys. So tell me which uniform you like better, if you like them both. If you're getting one, or if you've already gotten one and you're posting better scores or better times in certain game modes with these new characters, hit me up in the comment section. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow and on Twitch. Take care.